In 1986, the Soviet Union was a nuclear superpower. Its reactors were symbols of scientific mastery, industrial confidence, and state control. Chernobyl was not a forgotten outpost, it was part of the future. When Reactor 4 exploded, it did not just release radiation. It challenged the assumption that the system running it could not fail. The reactor did not explode because it was unstable. It exploded because it was stable under assumptions that were never meant to be tested. In the early hours of April 26, 1986, Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was undergoing a safety test. The test was procedural. It aimed to determine whether the turbine spinning down after a power loss could generate enough residual electricity to bridge the few seconds before backup diesel generators activated. The scenario assumed order, a controlled shutdown, predictable physics, disciplined execution. What occurred instead was the exposure of a hidden flaw inside the RBMK reactor design. An RBMK reactor used graphite to moderate neutrons, slowing them so they could sustain a nuclear chain reaction, and water to cool the core. Under certain conditions, this design had a dangerous characteristic known as a positive void coefficient. In simple terms, when water inside the reactor turned to steam, the reaction rate could increase rather than decrease. Steam, which should have dampened the reaction, could amplify it. This property was known, but it was considered manageable under standard operation. The test pushed the reactor into a non-standard state. Power had already dropped too low earlier that night due to operator error and procedural pressure. To raise it again, operators withdrew too many control rods. The neutron-absorbing rods meant to slow the reaction. At low power, the reactor became unstable in a way that was not fully intuitive to those running it. Xenon, a byproduct of fission that absorbs neutrons, had accumulated in the core, suppressing output. When operators tried to compensate, they unknowingly set the stage for a surge. At 1:23 a.m., the test began. Steam formation increased as coolant flow changed. Because of the positive void coefficient, more steam meant more reactivity. More reactivity meant more heat. The feedback loop accelerated. When operators realized power was spiking, they pressed the AZ5 button, the emergency shutdown. This action should have ended the reaction immediately. Instead, it triggered the final escalation. The RBMK control rods had graphite tips. When inserted, those graphite ends initially displaced water in the lower part of the core before the neutron-absorbing section fully entered. For a brief moment, pressing the shutdown button increased reactivity rather than reducing it. In a stable reactor, this effect was negligible. In an unstable one, it was catastrophic. Within seconds, power surged to many times the reactor's rated output. Fuel channels ruptured. Water flashed into steam. Pressure built faster than containment structures could handle. The first explosion blew the 1,000-ton reactor lid upward. A second explosion followed, exposing the graphite core to open air. The graphite caught fire, not like a bomb, but like a forge. What melted that night was not only fuel rods. It was a management system built on procedural confidence and incomplete transparency. Operators had not been fully informed about the reactor's design vulnerabilities. The test continued despite conditions that would have halted it in a more decentralized environment. Hierarchy suppressed hesitation. The first minutes defined everything that followed. Firefighters arrived unaware that the debris scattered around them contained radioactive graphite. They treated it as an industrial fire. There was no immediate public acknowledgement of the scale of the release. Radiation monitors that maxed out were dismissed as faulty because their readings exceeded expected limits. In those initial hours, the danger was not only radiation. It was interpretation. Systems built to maintain stability resisted recognizing instability. Data that contradicted assumptions was filtered through institutional habit. The explosion was not inevitable in a physical sense. It was inevitable once design risk, procedural rigidity, and informational opacity aligned. Chernobyl's early moments reveal a broader pattern. Complex systems often fail not when components break, but when safeguards behave as designed under conditions designers did not fully imagine. Stability becomes conditional on narrow parameters. Once those parameters are crossed, the mechanisms meant to protect the system accelerate its failure. The explosion did not end when the reactor lid blew apart. It continued in silence. In the hours after the blast, radiation readings that exceeded instrument limits were dismissed as malfunction. Evacuation of Pripyat was delayed. Public statements minimized severity. Only when elevated radiation was detected in Sweden did full acknowledgement become unavoidable. The instinct was not transparency. It was containment of information. The RBMK reactor had been chosen because it was cheaper, scalable, and compatible with Soviet industrial priorities. Its design vulnerabilities were known within restricted circles, but not widely disclosed. Admitting structural flaws would have signaled weakness in a superpower that defined itself through technological mastery and centralized control. Chernobyl revealed something darker than a design defect. It exposed a political culture in which authority depended on appearing infallible. In such systems, data that contradicts confidence is treated as error. Hesitation is discouraged. Admission is dangerous. The Soviet Union did not collapse because of a reactor. It collapsed because trust eroded. Chernobyl accelerated that erosion. When citizens learned that radiation had been measured elsewhere before it was acknowledged at home, the illusion of control fractured. The explosion was physical. The damage to legitimacy was structural. Reactor 4 did not only melt fuel, it melted the assumption that the system overseeing it could always manage the consequences of its own ambition.